Hello, my name's Nick Park from Evangelical Alliance Ireland, and this is our weekly message. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. This coming Sunday is actually the International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. That's this Sunday, 6th of November. And all around the world, their churches will be taking time out to pray for persecuted believers all over the world. And if you are a church leader, I would prayerfully ask you to set aside a little bit of time this Sunday to pray for the persecuted church in your church service. And thank God we have a number of Christian ministries that keep us abreast of what's happening with persecution of Christians around the world. Of course, there's Voice of the Martyrs, there's Open Doors, there's Release International, and there's our own excellent Irish-based organisation, Church in Chains. And you can check out, actually, Church in Chains have a number of resources for the International Day of Prayer for Persecuted Church, and you can check them out at their website at churchinchains.ie. Now, when we look at where Christians are being persecuted, of course, it's the usual suspects most of the time. And so we see what's happening in China as China is becoming more autocratic and moving backwards on personal freedoms. We see persecution from fundamentalist Hindus, for example, in India. We have atheistic regimes such as North Korea. And of course, we have Islamic regimes as well that often persecute and discriminate against Christians also. But this year, if you look at Church in Chains website, you will see a new section on persecution taking place within Europe. And we're talking about Ukraine. And that might surprise some people because they say, well, hang on, isn't Russia supposed to be a Christian country? And yeah, the official religion of Russia and the dominant religion there is, of course, Orthodox Christianity. But you know what? You can be persecuted for your faith by people who claim to be Christians. And that has happened many times over the years. And sadly, it does seem to happen whenever Christianity joins forces with nationalism. And when a particular form of Christianity is very strongly identified with nationalism, then that Christianity seems to go off the rails pretty quickly and very often ends up intolerant, ends up supporting all kinds of cruelties and abuses, and ultimately ends up persecuting Christians of other churches. And perhaps the greatest example of this would be in the years leading up to the Second World War and the Second World War itself, where many churches rode in behind Hitler and the Nazis because they thought it was a Christian thing to support his mission to make Germany a great nation once more. Nationalism and religion, when it comes together, can be very dangerous indeed. Of course, in more recent times, when we had the wars in the Balkans, when stuff that went on in Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, for example, there were great cruelties perpetuated there by people who were very strongly religious. And yet their religious faith became entwined with their nationalism. And so you had Orthodox Christians, for example, persecuting and butchering Catholic Christians in Croatia. So we need to be very careful about this, and we need to recognize that it's happening in our world again today. Now, first of all, we need to examine ourselves, because when we start entwining our Christian faith with nationalism, so it's hard to see where one ends and the other begins, then we really are in a very serious danger of distorting the gospel of Jesus Christ and worshipping false gods. And that's what's happening in Ukraine right now, because you have evangelical Christians in particular being persecuted in parts of Ukraine that are now controlled by Russia. Now, this did not begin with the invasion of Ukraine earlier this year. It was already going on. There's a church that I've worked with very closely. I've visited many times. I've trained pastors there. I've led many seminars. I've preached there, done evangelism. And it's in Slavyansk, which is in the eastern part of the country. It's basically very close to Donetsk. And this is the part of the country where the Russian propaganda says everybody was being persecuted and they wanted to get out from under Ukraine and be free under Russia. all the times I visited there, I never heard anyone say that. They were enjoying the religious freedom they had as part of Ukraine. And when Slavyansk is back under Ukrainian control right now, and we pray that it will continue to be so and that the church there will continue to have freedom to worship. But before, when the conflict, because there was a conflict going on there with Russian-backed separatists, and whenever they took over the church on the edge of Slavyansk, they basically turned it into a sniper post because it was the largest, tallest building in the area, and church services were closed down. The pastor found himself in a jail cell, and all kinds of nonsense took place until the town came back under Ukrainian control once more. But in those areas controlled by separatists, there are now serious cases of pastors being arrested, of churches being closed, of Christians, Baptist Christians and Pentecostal Christians, for example, being told that once Russia really takes control here, your feet are gone from here, because this is going to be an Orthodox town and there's no place for people like you. And sadly, of course, the Russian Orthodox Church has very much backed Putin's invasion and thrown its weight behind it and acted as apologists for the things that are being done there, and trying to give an invasion a veneer of religious respectability. So we should not be surprised that persecution is taking place there in the occupied portions of Ukraine. And so we need to pray. We need to pray against persecution wherever it is taking place, whoever it is being done to, and whoever is doing the persecuting. And so I would encourage you this Sunday, take time out to pray. I hope your church will be marking International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. But even if your church doesn't do that, maybe you as an individual would take time out to pray for believers wherever they're being persecuted. And as we're praying for believers in the places we usually pray for them, in Iran and Syria and Pakistan and in India and such places, and China, please do pray for the Christians in Ukraine, that God will strengthen them and support them, and that they will continue to flourish and grow, and the churches will flourish and grow even under persecution. It's a depressing subject to talk about. I would much rather be talking about something jolly and happy and upbuilding rather than talking about the persecution of the church. But it is something that Jesus told us would happen. And we are told that we should pray for our brothers that are being persecuted as if it was we ourselves that are being persecuted. So let's do that. Not just this Sunday, we should be doing it all the time, but let's particularly take time to pray for the persecuted church this Sunday. It might be Friday, but Sunday's coming.